Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Last Tokong. It's again a very new episode, season 4, episode 1. So today we have a very special guest. I know like last time we invited people from other team. Again, we invited someone from other team. I think the guy in front of you, probably someone very familiar with and someone you have probably seen before. His name is Don Yu. If you're not familiar with him, I'll let him actually introduce himself.
Hello. Actually, before I start with who were the other guests? Last time you said.
Previously, I had people from campaigns. I had got people from search. So talk about search, talk about campaigns. This time round is more generic review.
Okay, cool. Okay, so hi guys, my name is Don. Later we can talk a bit more about maybe how I started e-commerce and some of my past experiences. So currently I'm in Lazada. I work in the seller program team. I'm heading that department along with the O2O and innovations team. So basically, in short, we design programs internally to see how we can really help sellers to continue to progress within the organization. You know, if you are doing better, are there certain portions that we can help you? And if you are new to the platform, are there certain booster programs, right, that we can help you to really kickstart your online business? O2O, I think self-explanatory, as we are one of the more dominant, or if not the most dominant e-commerce platform in Singapore. We have to do some online and also some offline events. So my team has been working tirelessly on it. And so is innovation team as well.
Yeah, I think of course the most prominent one that everyone mentioned definitely is his programs. I think you're very familiar with it, everyday cashback, free shipping max, and recently we also launched like spa programs itself. So all this, even interested, you can always look back to Lazada University, and of course have a look at this content itself. But of course, I think before we start out, I think also a very interesting question. Before even we start on your background and your history itself, that's what the podcast title is, that the Legend of Don Yu. Okay, so we'll talk about, of course, what actually got you into e-commerce in the first place. What actually interests you?
Okay, so I don't know whether I've actually shared this amongst friends. Maybe have. I started e-commerce when it was 2015. So I think back then, totally different from now, right? Everybody were very happy with buying offline. Very happy with GSS sale, which usually happen June July period. So when I started, usual, right, when I was still in uni, that period in NS, so I was reading books like Zuckerberg by Howard Schultz, which is the founder of Starbucks. All these, wow, they are getting inspired, right, as you're young and everything. And then when I got to uni, I think so I went to SMU. Shout out to Singapore Management University. Anyway, so I apart from attending lessons when I can, I excuse myself sometimes with legitimate reasons to go to networking events. So I think one thing good about university in Singapore is that so for example, if me and you today who are already working adults, we have to go for all these programs, right? We probably have to pay $150, $200 per session. But as students, we have subsidized rates at $50, maybe $20, and then usually it's like ex-CMO of Coca-Cola. So all these big guys who have decades of experience. So I usually go there, and most of the time, thankfully, I'm usually one of the youngest in the room So we are people who are 10, 20, 30 years above me, and then I'm usually the odd one out. But then I figure a way and get comfortable. Maybe, hopefully, and thankfully, I'm a bit more extroverted so I got away. So I met different people from different lines. I understand about a little bit, of course, about how certain luxury brands were started. Even I spoke to this guy who was working in a ship brokerage. Like, wow, so interesting. All these thousands and millions of money and how it flows, right? So I was reading and was watching articles, and then I bumped upon this thing called e-commerce. It was super primitive when I started. It was not even called Q10. It was called G Market, right? In our time, G Market.
Yeah, G Market.
Right. And of course, previously they were known to be selling replicas. So and a lot of people go towards there. So I went there. Long story short, I met a few opportunities to start an online beauty business. So as a guy at 23, 24, I forgot how old I was, but 2015. It's a bit weird for me to start beauty because I have not put a single lipstick or foundation on myself So I'm like, okay, it's okay. It was still a very interesting business to go into. But the undeniable truth I wanted to go through is it has to be e-commerce. Because brick and mortar usually need a pile of cash,
yes,
which obviously I don't. I do not know much about branding, but e-commerce is there are a few models that were out there, so I could learn and use, and in a matter of maybe 6 to 7 months, we started a relatively okay beauty online beauty business. We sold fragrances, skincare, cosmetics. Most of the brands that you can see in departmental stores and some of the Korean and Japanese brands out there also lah. So that's how I actually got into the industry.
Yeah, I think the first thing probably also is why beauty, why you choose beauty. That right now as e-commerce compared to last time, it was very narrow. Last time it was very narrow. It wasn't like now. That's why you have like things like digital goods. You have things like electronics. You have things like general merchandise, storage cases.
Yes.
So what made you really choose like so many categories? You choose beauty.
Okay, so I probably have two main reasons. So number one is that as I started with little to no experience or background, beggars can't be choosers, right? So for me, I had to really go out there, put myself out there, and whatever opportunity that threw themselves at me, I assess. If it's good to go, I'll go ahead. So brings me to the next point is that I actually had 3 criteria lah when I wanted to start a business back then. So the first is it has to be in the women's industry, because they are still contributing largely to the various assortments, and there's a bit more space for branding. I mean, I don't know, I might be not a very good representative of a man, but for me, I might be buying 1 to 2 things and then I stop buying for the next 6 months. So as a life cycle, customer life cycle kind of thing, I want repeated customers, right? So that's one. Next thing would be, it has to be online, like I mentioned, because brick and mortar was very costly at the time, and I also took into consideration that I was actually in uni, right? Thirdly would be, it has to be a little heritage in nature, a bit of luxury in nature, I don't want to do something that's a bit of a common good, because remember back then we were G-Market, I don't know, just quoting some Balenciagas or some Chanels with extra L, with extra E in the middle. It's very hard to compete if you don't have a factory that is, offshore. So for me, that was just 3 reasons. And when opportunity came, fragrances, skincare, cosmetics, and the brand that was available to me at my disposal, okay lah, right? It's women's, largely, not all, and largely women, because men also uses it these days. Also at the same time, it is a bit more luxury. Of course, the tail end, we are not talking about watches or cars or jewelries, but it's still kind of luxury. And last but not least, online, easy to start.
So but beauty definitely, the opportunity came in the beauty industry itself. So how do you like navigate yourself? Like isn't it right now like we have I know you have Last Mall and things. In the past, it wasn't that easy to build a branding, especially establish yourself as selling something. So I think in the past it was more direct. I think like you meant G-Market, what they were probably really popular with was selling actually electronic accessories like phone cases, things that are very, very significantly have a low ticket price. So how do you I think I actually know his actual store name, but how do you navigate customers to spend a bit more during that time on e-commerce, which is considered a risk area?
So that's interesting, and that's a great question also. So when I joined in 2015, if I'm not wrong, Lazada was establishing itself, having an almost strong foothold. It was that flippening phase where we were going towards the number 1 spot in Singapore. So I think thankfully I was able to ride that wave. So back then, as we all say, the industry being such a primitive one, we were doing CSVs. Remember, we have to have open office, then we convert back, and then we upload. Not like all of you who are tuning in right now with very good back-end systems. While you click with a button, your ASC is so good, right? So with the industry being so primitive back then, really the competitors out there and their teams, because we go for networking sessions and we largely have the same suppliers, so we kind of know who are we working or competing with. They are largely middle to slightly older age. They might not have tech on their advantage, but they have very strong product and industry knowledge. Meaning at the flick of their arm, they roughly know, okay, with order that comes in, they know what to procure exactly at what price. For me, no, is a YSL lipstick at $23 cheap, or is a Chanel number 5 at $500 expensive. I didn't have such things, right? So that was one thing that I really had to navigate by myself. Maybe ask my business partners, ask my mentors, ask my whoever. And the next thing is that they largely know people who know people who know people, right? So those are the 2 things that I really set out to start with. Thankfully, I was surrounding myself with okay and very nice people that wish for me to grow.
Mm.
So they taught me, okay, this is how you navigate the industry. These are the assortments to go towards, what to avoid at the very start. And I could really concentrate on the cash flow first.
Okay.
And then after that, because the company was growing quite well to our knowledge, then we were able to open more doors for the company to go even further. And of course, not to mention a lot of platforms, of course Lazada being one of the most supportive ones, we were able to ride the wave, right? As these giants came up. So that was a totally different time, and thankfully we were able to navigate it. Yep.
Yeah. Well, do you remember what your biggest challenges what just one single challenge that you faced during when managing as doing your having your I would say managing your career as a seller? What's just one? It can be operational one also.
So actually, so again, caveat is that the market have changed quite a bit. So back then, the toughest portion was finding a way to get your products to sell online. Because as much as we were doing what we needed to do, consumers themselves were also not convinced that e-commerce was the way to go. Right. Today, right, if you were to name the top 3, top 4, Lazada being one of the top, if not the top, today, traffic is aplenty. Back then, most people still go your Gain Cities, your Harvey Normans, your CapitaLand malls. Everybody was there. Then we were the ones who are the bargain hunters. But now, different already. Everybody is there. Is about how you play on the platform. So back then, if you ask me, one of the biggest problem is, okay, now I want to focus on online. But how do I, with all these things being considered, being the stakeholders being still so primitive as well, logistics was not like today. Things spoil, this and that. Everything was messy, and of course, then that was how our partners like Ninja Van and SingPost were also cleaning themselves out and growing in a scalable form. So that was the toughest to me. Like, okay, now my perfume is 50% off. I don't know, ABC company out there, departmental stores, but still nobody bought.
Yeah,
that was the toughest for me.
That was
right?
I think that was the very tough. A lot of times when we went back to the past, is like we always have this difficulty with how do you show the deals right in front of the customer's face.
Exactly.
How to make sure even if everyone was like say that this is 50%, how do I get it straight to your face and know that this deal is straight 50% off? Like that was, and in the back then what you mentioned is a lot of things was really really manual.
Exactly.
Like I remember when I came in very quite late, 2018. That was when the Alibaba migration happened. So everything when we initially had was very manual, from like printing your every bill to even like escalation was very manual from your end. I think of course from a seller perspective, a lot of sellers had the opportunity to grow with us from a pre Alibaba phase to actually eventually to say we and then now we have a lot of things which sellers, I think you will probably be glad that you have that. Right now, you have which is very automated, and even things are triggered automatically and once he hits certain criteria itself. But of course, sellers, you will never know what happened in the past itself. But next, of course, what I think he also mentioned that what happened next after what's your next career after being a seller? How long were you actually beauty seller for?
I was in charge of that for about 4.5 years. So within that 4.5 years, we started in Singapore. I didn't even know what's a private limited, and then after that we started it. And linking back to when everything was so primitive, right? After you kind of conquer Singapore, what happens next? Singapore, of course, so small population, over 6 million and all that, right? So the natural thing to do next is to go into more markets. But not like now, right? When we ding or when we call, the Malaysia guy will help us and our colleagues there, right? And the Indonesian colleagues will help us and everything. Back then, everything was siloed. Everybody was growing, or what we call guerrilla marketing, and growing on their own terms, right? So what I had to do when I want to go into more markets, I have to open a Senja Berhad.
Yeah, correct.
I have to fly there and to open a UOB or OCBC, I can't remember, in JB or KL, right? We start, and then back then, bring a pile of cash or something like that. I can't remember. There was a minimum deposit, right? And then same thing for Indo and so on. So I did that for 4.5 years. Made a ton of friends, until today actually. Very, very thankful to have a lot of people help me and to really understand, although it was harsh conditions, to really understand like what it means to really hire, what it means to really team manage procurement, inventory, and not just, okay lor, you give me this at 30% off for Chanel 25, then I buy. Or you give me a YSL 1-for-1, I buy. Right? So there was a bit of a soft skill training for me, so which I'm thankful. So 4.5 years, right?
Would you consider that that's your most important life lesson that you learn? Or is there anything else that you learned that during the period that makes you a great person that you are now?
Wow, great person. Thank you for your praise. Thank you for your praise. No, so I don't think I'm great. I think still many things to improve on. So, I think the biggest lesson, if you would ask me until today, is always question why. But of course, within boundaries, if your boss say want to increase your pay, don't ask why just take and run, right? So always ask why in a way where, because I was young, I was speaking to people who are my grandfather's age. They are driving Lambos. They are having day dates on maybe got 10 on each hand, all very rich, and I became in a survival mode. Whatever they tell me, I cannot take it for granted. But at the same time, I have to play the card of the young man, right? So I always question why. And really, with many whys that you ask, actually linked to one of my very favorite mentor, Elon Musk, which is shout out.
Elon Musk is your mentor?
No. It's an imaginary mentor, okay?
Okay.
So shout out Elon Musk if you're looking at this. But anyway, Tesla for the win. So one important thing is to really question the question most of the time, right? Then you really have a bit of advancement. Actually, with this, I can share a story. So back then when we were doing quite okay, not too bad. On Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, we were doing quite well with our Clarins, with our Lancome. So I think those beauty sellers, you all will appreciate these brands. With our Lancome, with our Clarins, with our what have you, right? All these very staple brands. Then I'm like, okay, when mega campaigns we do well, BAU we do well, but something is missing, right? There's a gut feeling, but you don't know what. Then after a while, I remember there was this show called Descendant of the Sun. Then after that, something like Goblin came out. Sorry, I'm not very familiar with all this. So there was a wave after wave after wave of Korean
or show.
Yes,
dramas.
Shows and dramas, and that actually shaped the beauty industry. So I'm like, cannot be, right? Because of globalization of the world, industries affect industries. And that was how I questioned why. I sat down with my team. I still remember I gathered my team, about 4 or 5 of us, mostly ladies, so I could get good intel from them to learn about the market always. Say, hey, what's going on? Is there something we are missing? And then they came out with a bunch of brands. 3CE, Peri Pera, COSRX, all these things which I've never heard in my life, right? I'm like, okay, something's missing. And because of that meeting, we did a bit of research. I think within, weeks, I was in Korea and meeting suppliers frantically, and then that was how we built that chain of supply side from Korea. So if I didn't ask why, and I was like, okay lah, we get money, we constantly growing 30-40% per month or whatever, then we are happy, right? But there was a constant questioning of why and what next, right? So I think that was very valuable for me lah.
Yeah, even also I think that's enough of talking to you about like being a beauty seller. I think we'll just talk about your next phase of life, which were, I don't know how many years ago, 5, 4, 3?
I lost count, maybe 3-4 years ago. 3-4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, 3 months ago, he actually went to, I think it's for confidentiality sake, we won't name the enabler, we just call it enabler.
Yeah, we went enabler.
We just call it a brand enabler in the, so that of course, he went to a brand enabler due to some issues, okay, but of course, but what's so different for enabler to a business? Okay,
so I think actually if you all go to my LinkedIn, you all can see lah. But anyway, after 4.5 years, I exited from the business, so I asked myself what's next lah. So I'm like, okay, do I do again, meaning start from zero and create something, or maybe join a corporation to really fill the information gaps that I'm missing? Because as my first job, right, I already do my own thing really. So I might not know what somebody would have if they would have to gone into a proper organization. They will understand, things like team management. They understand how departments work with departments. So I thought, okay, maybe the world is my oyster. There's still so many more things I don't know. So I joined Enabler, the Enabler, and I kind of purposefully and also thankfully joined a beauty dominant enabler, so that at least the product knowledge side is covered. But interestingly, when I'm there, they were starting up a new arm of their enabling to work with global brands which are not beauty. And I'm like, wow, okay, good. So when I'm there, I was excited because first layer is okay lah, beauty, familiar, fine, no problem. And then there were global brands that were in the toys and games, and they were also in the personal care, and I could then build on industrial and context product knowledge and broaden it up. Then become, I'm not just beauty e-commerce trained, I am e-commerce trained, right? So going back to your question on what was the challenge or what was interesting about Enabler is I kind of move up the value chain in a way. So how, at least how I see it is seller, then after that enabler, right? Seller or brand, then enabler, then product, then platforms. Not in a power cycle, but it's just how we go up and down. And I went up a little, which is enabling. And being an enabler, you essentially are doing what you need to do for your brand or if you're your own seller, but you have to also manage the expectations and relationship with your various platforms. That's something that was interesting for me really. So when I was working with ABC brands, which are huge in the market, number ones and twos and threes of global rankings, right? It became, okay, although I kind of have the upper hand versus the different stakeholders, but at the same time, I have to also leverage on their expertise. I have to work with the Lazadas of the world, I have to work with the other platforms of the world to see, hey, okay, this is the direction, but this is my direction. How can we then match in a business plan kind of manner to make sure it's a win-win, right? So that was interesting, which I didn't have to do, because back when I was a small seller, marketplace seller, okay lah, I grow, right? Whatever inventory I put, I get more flash sales, I get more visibility, I go up the ranks, and I similarly copy and paste across the region. Yeah.
So on top of that, I think you mentioned very, very importantly, like enable business. That I think when you enter the enable business, it was also like some sort of there was a rise in wave of the actual e-commerce adoption, where like we probably start to see more brands coming in, and then probably there's also what we call the enabler wave, where enablers were growing. Right now we have enablers, but I think then enablers were starting to see their presence being very important in the market. That's when actually enablers became very, very big. I think this period of time right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right now,
and I think one thing interesting that we have to raise is when, okay, I don't think it was a good thing for humanity or Earth, but COVID happened. And undeniably, from a digital and technology standpoint, that really pushed both brands and consumer to be very embracing towards tech and digital services. So, okay, again, our caveat is that it wasn't a very good thing, whatever, but for our industry, it kind of shifted retail.
Yep.
Right? Until today, I think there are a bit of remnants that are still staying. We do see a bit of O2O kind of collaboration, like if we can reference some very successful brands out there, Love Bonito. If not mistaken, they are one of the best in O2O kind of collaboration out there, and so is IKEA and all that, right? So I think undeniably that was that wave, and like what you say, a lot of the brands, because of how big they are, they might not want to manage every market themselves, and therefore there was a space for market enablers or e-commerce enablers. So that they're huge. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So, but then when you mentioned like e-commerce space was hard to get in, like in terms of it's not the product part, it's more the e-commerce part.
Yeah.
How do you grow e-commerce? People always say I just copy and paste the retail model in, but most of the time it has been proven that the retail model doesn't really work when you come to e-commerce space itself. It doesn't mean that you're very good at retail, you come to e-commerce, you'll be successful. It may not be the right formula at that point of time. But I also think that if you're at the point where you're enabler, what do you normally encourage brands to do, or brands to do to really be successful when collaborating with an enabler?
So when I was in the enabler, if I can, I will categorize them between two different category of brands that I work with. I'll start with the first. The first one will be they're already. They just needed a catalyst to come into e-commerce.
Which is COVID.
It could be COVID, right? It could be a pile of cash that they are ready to maybe come up with a new e-commerce headcount, whatever, and they start, right? So they were ready. They had the correct people behind the steering wheel. They just needed the chance to steer it up. They had a very good product which are supportive and will be supported by online consumers and all that. So those are easier to integrate, right? You just needed teething issues like, okay, your pricing strategy, how is it gonna be? Your marketing, how is it gonna be? How are you gonna simple things like split inventory versus offline, online. I think these things, although it's very simple to marketplace sellers, but when you talk about brands, it's a huge thing, right? Especially when there's new launch.
Yeah, correct.
Wow, new launch, okay, how many to put online, how many to put offline? Is it 6 o'clock online, 2 o'clock online? It's not complicated, right? But those are teethings, easy to solve, right? Moving on to the second category of brands, which are having that foresight to come online. Wow, other people are up there, I also want. But structurally they are not ready. Those are harder nuts to crack, right? So simple things like when they send marketing collaterals, you can tell the way they design is for people who are walking on the streets and
the shopping
wow,
malls.
good deal, I want to go in and see. But it is not for people who are online, right? So we have to tell, hey, you know, you have to change this, change that, and to put certain elements that are there. Call to action usually missing. Because offline, call to action, usually you get in, your SAs are there, hey, hello sir, how can I help you? Wow, this one is actually the right? Those are the call to action. But online, 3 seconds, or thanks to, you know, social media moving so fast, milliseconds or whatever, I'll scroll next, right? So simple things like that was important. Another critical criteria is how to ensure that you play the online game and not get involved with your offline strategies. I think those are very important things that the second category or second group of brands usually go into. Yeah.
So you mentioned a very, very good thing, which is content. Content is something that it wasn't in focus until the last three years. I think 3 years. In the past, like people just I just take this picture from somewhere. I just dump it online. I just find it like this. I use some cropping tool. I just put it there. And then I think that you were also probably one of the first few movers who tried to like really make something like a product image that is really your own and belongs to you. So how do you come to that realization that content is actually something the best is the first thing you need to do to actually help you with your sales or traffic?
Sure. I think that was how I learned Photoshop also. So when I started, so going back to my seller side, because I think that would be more relevant in that context. So when I joined as a seller and I was building up my business back then, I always remember this Versace Bright Crystal, if not mistaken, which is a pink color, very nice fragrance. And the ambassador back then for the brand and also the perfume was Beyonce. So when I went on to Lazada, when I went on to Gmarket, when I went to Amazon, eBay, whatever, I always see that same poster, like you said, in different dimension. Got one 1,800 by 50, got one 1,800 by 200, whatever it is, right? So as a consumer, then which Beyonce should I want? Should I want the stretched out Beyonce, or do I want the squeeze Beyonce, or, you know? So to me, I'm like, that's as a consumer, because thankfully I'm relatively young versus the other competitors out there. I felt that there must be a sense of a differentiation. Similar to, I always tell my staff back then, when you go to the library or a bookstore, I think that, and I have a very strong disagreement with the phrase, don't judge a book by its cover. Because ultimately, what you are picking up, confirm either the title or the synopsis or the color of the book that got you to pick it up and to consider borrowing it or buying it. So similarly, using the analogy, my PDP, right, or my SKU cover that customers are looking at would be the first thing that we would want our consumers to see and then to click and then to buy. So back then when we were doing, I think those that attended my classes back then, you all would understand there were 3 main criteria that I need every PDP to be on board. And thankfully my team was supportive of that. Number 1, the SKU, or rather the product name. I don't know, clarins, cellulite, whatever. That's the first thing. Second thing, the function of the PDP. Or rather the product. Okay, cleansing and cellulite remover. Whatever, I'm making this up, right? And then thirdly would be the price. If it is to your advantage, then you put it there. Of course, not everything you have to put the function, like a table. just a table, it's just a table, right? but in that sense, right? So at a glance, it will want to make me click in. Then I read, and wow, okay, back then it was 299. Today there's a sale, maybe 199. And then you apply Lazada bonus, whatever it is, and then you can buy, right? So I think those are the main few things that made me think, actually content very important. Then I try once a while to pretend like a consumer. Then I go to my shop here not nice, there not nice. Why is this thing not working? The yellow and the blue don't match, sort of things, right? So those are things that made me realize that content is important. Yep.
So do you think there are areas that sellers to do better in terms of, like, I would say, right? But let's take today's context, because today's context is a very challenging context, because we are past COVID, and then we are actually, people are trying to, like, in the middle of the road, they say I want to go retail, or I want to go e-commerce, which is still better for me, or I just shop here, shop there a bit. So what are the things that you think that sellers should do to, like, really be really maintain, to stay ahead of the curve, besides content?
Sure. So I think I actually, interestingly, remember we had a gathering with some of the sellers recently, and that actually struck me. So if there's one, I wouldn't have too many advice, because I'm also learning from everyone, right? But if there's one advice, I feel that whole COVID, post-COVID situation is a very interesting a point for all the bosses and entrepreneurs, and also even the various MDs and managers out there. As long as you have a team, I think I strongly encourage you guys to do it. Is that either you did very well in COVID or not, right? It's either these two, right? It's binary. Those who did well, I think you shouldn't rest on your laurels, because by doing well during COVID, could it be that you were still enjoying that so-called remnants of the post-COVID effect? But what if one day denounced and everything is gone and whatever not, and the real consumers are already slowly going back to offline retail, and then you are done without a strategy, right? So I think doing good, don't rest on your laurels, continue to reinvent the team. Going back to our first principles, ask why, right? Why are we doing well, or why are we not doing well? We move on to the next sellers. The sellers who were discouraged or not doing well during COVID. For example, I know there are some outdoor related, picnic related, or even, things that require to go outdoor and exercise and all that, were usually not doing that well during COVID. Of course, your bicycles and whatnot, of course, everybody was going waves and waves of exercising, so those did fine. Those that did not well, are there other things that you can learn pre-COVID that you can bring back? Because humans we're always in cycles. Fashions are in cycles, and everything are in cycles. So to me, I think that strikes me the most. All the 大老板 and all that who are doing well. Wow, we COVID this and that. But thankfully, you are continuing to do well. But are there certain tweaks that you can continue to do so to continue your success from there? Us included as platforms, right? So therefore, every day we have reports, and we have different strategies to slowly improve and to so-called not rest on our laurels. And for those who are not doing well, let's see what is there for us, because the only way is up, right?
So e-commerce right now is definitely, like Don mentioned, is more. I think it's more challenging than ever, because of COVID. You definitely get more competition. You definitely get more. You get more competition with a lot of other sellers. Also, you do have a stricter price, because we have higher interest rates and inflation is running. There is really a lot of challenges. You really I think you need to, like, innovate on the why to really grow your business. Why is this happening? How can I grow better? What are my other strategies to, maybe, because again, seasons. I think seasons is a very key word to mention, right? Because in e-commerce, seasons moves a lot faster.
Exactly.
And right now, even with social media, it's even faster. Like, one thing can be trending for 1 week, and then next day it's gone. Next week it's just gone. No one wants it anymore. So that's very challenging for. Like you mentioned, I think now you mentioned, we went back to the concept of going your platforms. This is your current journey,
Yes, sir.
The current journey. So, and in all these three journeys, like you've been a seller, you've been an enabler, you're actually with a platform itself, which actually give you the most insight in the whole e-commerce business.
Shout out to Lazada. Insights. I think it's a bit hard to answer, because it builds on one another, right? But I think the most interesting portion was when I joined platform, right? Because if you were to take a look at it, seller or enabler, you're on one side. And when I joined Lazada, thankfully I made that leap of faith and it's kind of have been rewarded. You get a peek behind the curtains. Because every time when you submit a SKU, you reach out to your key account managers or VCAM, like, hey, this one flash sale. And then tomorrow 6 o'clock is there. Sell or don't sell, then it doesn't matter. But I know after that submission, after this, what are the certain things that happen? Of course, firefighting, this and that, everything. And I think one thing that I never fails to amaze me is the platform is actually working hand in hand with sellers to pursue consumers together. Because ultimately, right, the seller success is our success, because consumers come. So to me, that was, I wouldn't say the most that I've learned, but the most interesting versus my first 6 years of e-commerce. So this
a lot of
is the
sellers like
newest.
what you say is like, oh, I have an issue. You see being resolved in like maybe a few hours, but on the back end you involve like maybe a few teams, a few people to get your things being done. Like it can be a simple but change of information on the AS on the sales center. We actually takes a few teams involved to change a simple task on the sales center itself. So with that, I thought when I joined platform, it was also quite an eye opener to me.
Exactly.
To really say that, oh boy, how come to consumers it's a web page.
Yes.
But to us, it is a web page that has been shared by many different teams who, depending on what they are supposed to do, which is grow with the sellers themselves.
Exactly.
So,
because last time, right, as seller or enabler, I was like, just add that button there, the
correct.
buy now, put exclamation behind or what. But you see, of course, I'm not saying it because I'm defending my corporation and my organization. But the thing is, then I learned there is this thing called business risk. There's this thing called platform governance, right? Where when we change one thing, change two things, there are so many things down the line that's involved. So maybe at this time we can also share that we are always doing our best to help sellers and to also help consumers. So bear with us if things are a bit slow or fast. But yes, ultimately I think we are banding together to court the consumers onto our side of the field to just enjoy our products and services more.
Yeah, and of course, e-commerce space is very dynamic, I would say, because sellers, some sellers only see it like once a month, but we do say just on a very daily basis itself, which is actually trains the mind a lot. I think it trains the mind a lot to actually to quickly adopt to changes and then see how we actually benefit sellers as a whole itself from there. So I think your journey as Lazada, there's a few portions, right? You started off as in the commercial side itself, and then now you're more towards the operational side itself. So when you were on the commercial side, do you see the same mistakes being committed by sellers over and over again?
I would think so, and I think it's not only affecting our industry. I think we are effectively enabling and helping businesses to grow. But sometimes businesses have their own considerations when we have our own. So we see as mistake. Maybe it's intentional. I don't know, right? But yes, to answer your question, when I was in commercial, I was in charge of digital goods. So there were many mistakes, but also at the same time, I couldn't blame them because firstly, DG was new, right? Lazada was like 8-9 years into making, but DG was like 2.5 years when I took over, so very young. But beyond that, our sellers were either having their own portals, they are selling super well, like our GVs, our Cathays, which are selling their movie tickets. And also, they would have their own behemoth of a website that they are selling pretty well. So to me, that mistakes, definitely. But I think that is where I always help my team, and also my team help me. We help one another to see how we can, number one, understand where we are at versus our competitors. Number two, help the sellers who really want to help themselves. Then we go and empower those sellers that are transitioning and slowly improving themselves. So I think definitely they will be there. But education is important. Effective communication is always important. So those are the things that I pride myself and my team to have back when I was in commercial. Yeah.
Yeah, so sellers, please please join our Telegram group or even see our blog.
Yes.
Or you stay tuned to our blog page for all the latest news, because sometimes you miss out a lot of stuff that is being shared internally, because we do share something every day.
Yes.
Every Sunday we probably like even our blog page or even like our social medias, we do update them every day. Okay, so I think we talked about a lot of our careers as sellers and enablers. So
Yes.
like right now, what do you think? What's the key advice besides asking why? For what can actually, if I'm today, let's say I want to sell e-commerce today, I want to come to e-commerce space, I want to start selling, I want to identify what I want to buy, what's the most important thing that I should focus on before I even go Lazada, click seller.
Actually, my first question would be why, but then beyond that why, I truly believe today, okay, like you totally said it correct. The industry is ever so fun, but also because of the funness, if there's such a word, it also results to it being a dog is dog world, ever more so complicated and competitive. But because of the competitive nature, if brands out there, of course, in my 2 cents, if you can focus on these 2 things, usually you'll be alright. Number one, so other than asking why you want to go e-commerce, number one, what is your unique selling point? Like, what do you have that is an unfair advantage that the person on your right, the person on your left, the person in front of you and behind of you do not have? It can be as simple as my father knows this person. Or it can be as simple as like for example Wei Lun, he definitely is better as a high quality premium furniture seller than me. I don't know anything. I just learn nuggets of experience from him of teak Asian teak furnitures being a bit more sturdy, highly quality, not or even not susceptible to termites, and even at the same time having very interesting shapes to complement the house, right? So things like this that are unfair advantages, you need to identify them, right? That's super important. Whether it's something that you can access or something that you have built across the years, or if it's something that is at your disposal, that's one. Second thing also is, are you ready for that difficult push right at the start to slowly transit to become a successful seller, right? Because as compared to salaried workers like you and I, there is slightly to less concern of cash flow on a monthly basis. I'm not saying that we are not doing our jobs well or what, but right, there's that P&L portion that you don't really need to bother so much. But if an entrepreneur or if a guy who wants to start e-commerce, maybe he is doing a second job or whatever it is, if that is a bad month, he made a bad mistake, it can cost him up to 4, 5, 6 digits, depending on how risk-taking he is, right? So is he ready for that? What's his risk appetite? At what part of his life he's at? Is he still single and studying like me back then? I had nothing to lose. Anything in, everything in, never mind, right? And or getting ready to get married, have kids, late part of their life, getting CPF or whatnot, right? So I think all these are considerations. Even before we talk about, do you know online e-commerce do you know how to start, how to connect Wi-Fi? All these are easy because there is seller education, there is so many things out there, and of course Wei Lun is a head of seller engagement, so easy. So I think those are the 2 fundamentals, right? That is very important.
Yeah, so you mentioned also, I think you said one key thing, which is knowing, of course, the why you want to sell on e-commerce, and then of course all these other things that you need to consider before even clicking on the button. Do you like just a quick one, just for all the people who is going to view or going to see this?
Okay.
Is e-commerce a quick cash venture?
Definitely not. Unless you are already a big brand out there that is courted by a global audience. I don't know, I'm just randomly saying, if there's a certain brand out there, maybe, I don't know, the Supremes of the world, or I don't know, what have you, right? Fenty Beauty, right? That the whole world is courting. You have very little distribution channels across the globe. You open one.com or you open on Lazada, I assure you, you won't do too bad. But beyond that, there's a lot of it's like buying a new shoe, a full leather shoe. You need to ease it in, right? You need to make it comfortable. It might bite you back. That's where you might have a bit of a negative cash flow months. And when you ease the shoe well, the shoe will serve you well, right? So I think it's not a quick win.
Yeah, I think also like why I already mentioned that is to really get sellers in the right mindset to really think to work hard. I think being a seller is definitely not easy. Like I spent 5 years in Lazada. I can tell you, every day I talk to sellers. Their job is not very easy. They encounter a lot of issues. They encounter problems. They always have the problem of stressing out whether how to grow, what's the next step to for me, how to be bigger than my competitor. Every day they have a new competitor, and they are always like trying to innovate the next big thing to sell. So for sellers, definitely you need to think a bit more and work a bit more on giving yourself the edge. I think the edge is very important. Like Don already mentioned, even like knowing someone, a better supply chain is definitely a competitive edge. Something or you know about product, that's also a competitive edge. So you need to find something that you can or you are better than someone else to start a business somewhere. Okay. I think we covered the legend on Don Yu in basically three parts. If you really want to look through, you can always look through it. Like basically his journey as a seller, his journey as an enabler, and right now his journey on the platform. So what's in the future for you?
Lazada boleh ya. So for me, I think it's funny you asked this question. I was just thinking about it this weekend.
It's not like probably few years like, but like I say, what's after 5 years later? What do you think? Do we go back to being selling?
To my boss, if he's tuning in, no lah. But for me, one thing is for sure is that I love this space. I've been in here. The day I was calculating about 9-10 years already. 8-9 years. And so I think it is dynamic, like you said. It is ever changing, like you said. It has no doubt changed and shaped how brick and mortar commerce were done. I would definitely continue to be in this space to learn more. Whether I will go back selling or not, I think it's a matter of whether I get the opportunity to or not also. If you were to ask me, I think my boss asked me the other day, one important thing that I really hope, but of course not in the near future, definitely, to see how I can go into maybe e-commerce consulting. Because I think that's the natural progression for me to and then if I can at a fee, small fee, to see how I can benefit more of my fellow businesses around me with my, I don't know, hopefully interesting knowledge and also network. I think that can benefit a lot of people.
Thank Don to taking his time out to do this with me.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, so actually he shared a lot, and also like the sellers definitely appreciate his that he actually used to, before he was in Lazada, he used to like do training sessions during COVID to sellers on Zoom. Even on face-to-face sessions itself. So actually, I think some of the sellers really benefited from the training session that he learned, and then some of them actually, I think some of them, there was actually in last training survey that we had, there was a seller actually writing in the survey notes to thank Don for his advice many years back.
Thank you.
It's many years back. And of course, he has been a very, very positive influence on the e-commerce space itself. And of course, if you have happened to like if I see him or meet him, do talk to him, and then let's see you can click it off.
Yeah, definitely. Just a ding away, or you can add me on LinkedIn as well. Yeah, but of course, at the same time, Wei Lun has been in the space for very long. Known him for like how many years?
5 years.
5 years and counting. So I think being in the space, Wei Lun, super interesting, super dynamic. So hope everybody out there will continue to do well.
Right. Okay. Once again, thank you everyone for staying tuned to this episode of The Legend of Don Yu, and of course, definitely hope to see Don around. And then definitely, if you want to see any other episodes, it's all right below in the past. But you want to hear anyone else, or you want to be on this podcast itself, do reach out to our team. We'll be glad to have you on this podcast show itself. Right, Don, any last words before we just shut off?
No, thank you so much. Godspeed.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks everyone.
Bye. Lazada.